Hi, all you woodwind lovers out there. So it's Mondo, your friendly neighborhood woodwind teacher, back with another video for you. So today I'm going to be talking about some things for beginners, right? So if you're just starting out on saxophone or clarinet, just a few things about putting on the reed and the ligature correctly. I noticed that with my own personal private lesson students, that this tends to be something that they can struggle with, even when we go over it, right, in the first few lessons, and we go over it, as we continue to play. I noticed commonality is that they tend to struggle to get the reed placement correctly and also keep the ligature in the right spot and actually getting it onto the instrument as well, right? So I want to be talking about a few things, a few thoughts on how to do that the best way and what I like to do. So for saxophone and for clarinet, I actually have my clarinet one here too. So for both saxophone and for clarinet, it's going to be about the same for the most part. So when I'm first putting either instrument together, what I like to do is I'll always have the reed in my mouth. So when I open the case and I put the reed in my mouth to wet it, I kind of keep it in there while I'm putting the instrument together. So you do have a few options. Obviously, you can either try to put the reed on the ligature and have it on the mouthpiece already, and then you can try to put it on the instrument, right, onto the neck or on there. Or you could put the mouthpiece just on by itself separately onto the neck, right? You can put it on here first, and then you can get the reed and everything on there afterwards. I kind of tend to do both. I think I more put it on first and then get the ligature and reed on there. But either way, what you want to do is after, and I'm not quite sure what I did with my reed. What did I do with my reed? Oh, here it is. I put it down. I didn't even realize. So when you have the mouthpiece, right, what I like to do is I take the reed once it's thoroughly wet and moist. And remember, it's only going to play well if you have it moist enough. So then what I like to do is I take the mouthpiece, and what I'll do is I'll actually put the ligature on first, okay? So I tend to like metal ligatures. That's just me. There are obviously a lot of different kinds. You can have ones that have the screw on top, more of the leather. There's other ones, right? There's other metal ones that you kind of twist something from the bottom here, but it's going to be the same. So I like to put the ligature on first, and then what I do is I have the ligature loose, right? So it's not tight. You can move it up and down, right? There's some play there. And then what I like to do is take the reed, and if you could see from my side, it would be like this, where you can kind of move it up and down. What I do is I kind of lift it up like this. I put it kind of right inside there. Actually, maybe this is a better angle. I'll put it right in there in that space. I'll get it close, right? And then I'll bring the ligature down. Still haven't tightened it yet, so that we bring it down, right? And you ideally want to have the ligature be underneath this part right here, right? The little curve there on the reed. And when you look at it this way, you also want to make sure that the ligature is behind, right? This top part, right? What I see a lot of times is students putting it on like this, right? And you get that. Another thing is you can kind of get the reed being off center a little bit, like kind of like that, or it being twisted, right? So you want the reed to be lined up right in the center, and then you want this to also be, the ligature to be lined up in the center, right? And even if you don't have it correct right off the bat, what I like to do is, again, I still have this loose, I haven't tightened it yet, and I'll use my thumb. And I'll use my thumb as a way to wiggle, right, the reed, because I can wiggle the reed up, right, or I can wiggle the reed down. And then I get it close, and then what I do is when I have it, what looks like in the right spot, the way that I also can tell is by looking at it from the other side. Now, you'll notice on mine, when I go this way, I was always taught, and this is what I still do, there might be a different school of thought, but is you always want to have the reed just have a little slight sliver poking up on the other side, kind of right over the horizon. So if you see that, you got it lined up, right? It's looking good, then you can tighten it. You don't want to tighten it super tight, right? You just want enough, right? You don't want it to be super loose. You don't want it to be super tight. It's kind of almost like the story of like the three bears, right? It was either too hot or too cold. You want it to be right in the middle, right? We want it tight enough so that if you pulled on it, right, that it's not going to come off of there, right? It's pretty good on there, right? If we gave it a really strong pull, now it probably still wouldn't come off. But now one thing to keep in mind, sometimes when you have, probably on both, but I see it more on clarinet, some of the beginning ligatures that you see that will come with like a basic mouthpiece aren't super good. Sometimes you'll notice that when you try to get it together, these parts right here sometimes won't line up. It'll kind of, they separate. So you might have to kind of squish those together and then tighten it. So if that's happening to you, you might need to get a separate ligature if that's what's going on. But the same thing applies basically for clarinet, right? The same thing, you want to look from this side right there, right? You want to make sure everything's lined up. This is a little high. Another reason why we want it to be here, right, and not over the edge is so that it's holding the reed in the right spot, right? We don't want it to be putting pressure here to allow the reed to vibrate. And then when you put it on, regardless if it's the clarinet or the saxophone, you always want to make sure that you are twisting, right? So if you already have your saxophone set up and you're putting the mouthpiece on with the ligature and the reed, right? You want to hold it nice and tight. And when you put it on there, right? I might even hold it from up here. You always want to twist when you're getting that on. Now, I purposely didn't put anything on there so we could hear the sound. I don't know if you could hear that. So that's not a good sound. That means that I actually need some cork grease on there, but I wanted to demonstrate that for you. So if you're finding that when you're trying to put it on, if you're noticing that the ligature is coming loose, right, or that the reed is coming off, right, is kind of like not keeping on there, that means that either the ligature is probably not tight enough, or it's just not holding well enough on there, right? So you might want to put it on, the mouthpiece on first, and then put it on there, right? So you might want to check out your ligature and see what's going on. It could be that you just didn't tighten it tight enough. And then with the clarinet, right, the same thing. Once you have that there, you want to do the same thing. Whenever you put it together, saxophone or clarinet, when you're putting your instrument together, you want to make sure that you're doing a twisting motion, right? When you get that in there, whether it be here, whether it be at one of the tenons, you always want to do a twisting motion. Just like with saxophone, when you're putting the neck on, you want to twist. When you put the mouthpiece on, you also want to twist that on there just to get it in better. And if you have, if it's properly, if you use the cork grease properly and there's enough on there, you don't need a whole bunch on there, but just enough to make it better so that it can go on easier and so that it doesn't wear out the corks over time. And that's really the whole purpose of also having the cork grease on there too. So yeah, so then if you're just starting out, or I guess even if you're not starting out, if you haven't ever had that explained to you, hopefully that helps you a bit more understand how to put on the ligature and the reed and the mouthpiece properly. One final thing I'll say is that make sure when you're putting on the reed on there, another thing that I sometimes will see is students when, let's say that you have the reed up like that, like it's a lot higher. What I see students a lot of times doing is they'll try to push down from the top, right? So that's a no-no because the reeds are easily chippable and breakable. And especially if you're pushing down, you don't ever want to push from the top there because you can break it super easy. You want to either go from the bottom or from the side and wiggle it. You never want to push from the top because the tips of the reeds are very sensitive and can be broken. We want our reeds to last for as long as possible. So I hope that video helped you. If you have any questions about that, you can obviously let me know, or you can message me either here or on one of my other channels that I've included below. If you have any questions about lessons or other questions in general about the saxophone, clarinet, let me know. And I hope that helped you out and happy playing.